Audio Jungle.
Did you know that in the United States alone, 2 million people each year contract serious antibiotic resistant infections and 23,000 people die from them?
Did you also knew that the next major global pandemic might involve an antibiotic-resistant superbug?
Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about antibiotic resistance.
We come from Macolina's Health Institute. I am Dr. Salazar.
And I am Dr. Peláez. Welcome to CNN. To understand antibiotic resistance, we're going to take a look into history. First, various molds and plant extracts were used to treat infection by some of the earliest civilizations. Ancient Egyptians, for example, applied moldy bread to infected wounds. Nevertheless, until the 20th century, infections that we now consider straightforward to treat, like pneumonia or diarrhea caused by bacteria, were the number one cause of human death in the developed world.
In the 19th century, scientists started observing antibacterial chemicals in action. For example, Paul Heinrich, a German physician, found out that it's possible to create substances that can kill bacteria selectively without harming other cells. In 1901, he discovered that aspiramine was an effective treatment for syphilis. He named it as chemotherapy, and the word antibiotic was used 30 years later by Selman Waxman, who discovered 20 antibiotics.
Antibiotics were also discovered by Alexander Fleming, a Scottish scientist. In 1928, when he was experimenting with Staphylococcus, in one of his petri dishes appeared a green bulb of Penicillium notatum mold, a furry growth of fungi that ruins fruits and vegetables. What was most interesting about it was that it secreted a substance that killed bacteria, but couldn't do anything about it because he didn't know how to extract P. notatum from the mold.
After early trials in human wounds, collaborations with various pharmaceutical companies ensured that the mass production of penicillin, the antibiotic chemical produced by Pinotatum, was possible. Following in a fire in Boston, Massachusetts, in which 500 people died, many survivors were liable to an infection by Staphylococcus. Treatment with penicillin was hugely successful, and then the US government began supporting the mass production of this drug.
However, because antibiotics were being mass produced and were so effective, humans started abusing their use, even using it for diseases not related to infections. Antibiotic resistance is a natural process that occurs when bacteria came into contact with antibiotics, and some develop mechanisms to fight them. But when humans started using antibiotics excessively, they sped up the process. The more often we use antibiotics, the stronger bacteria gets, and it reproduces itself, creating more resistant bacteria and making the infection impossible to treat.
We also started giving the antibiotics to animals in order for them to grow bigger and faster. But later, we found out that bacterial resistance also happened in animals. And the resistant bacteria that live in their gut left from their body through manure and entered ours and other animals.
Besides from developing antibiotic resistance, humans stopped discovering new antibiotics. Because first, when they try to find new antibiotics, they keep finding the same stuff over and over again. Second, companies aren't interested in sponsoring the research because they prefer the drugs that you need to take your entire life and profit from them. Finally, US clinical trials are becoming long and expensive, so industries abandon the process.
Yes. To continue with our speech, we would like to introduce the consequences of the inadequate use of antibiotics, which are powerful medicines that can fight certain infections and can save life when used properly. They either stop bacteria from their reproduction or destroy them. Before bacteria can multiply and cause symptoms, the immune system can typically kill them. White blood cells attack harmful bacteria, and even if symptoms do occur, the immune system can usually cope and fight off the infection.
Sometimes, however, the number of harmful bacteria is excessive, and the immune system cannot fight them all. Antibiotics are useful in this scenario. As you might know, antibiotics are supposed to cure your illness, so if you don't take the respective measurements, then you can get different kinds of new viruses you didn't have before. So that's why antibiotics use are only by the doctor's order and with a certain amount of limits of consumption.
Doctors prescribe antibiotics to treat bacterial infections. Most of the side effects associated with antibiotics are not life-threatening. Some medical professionals have concerns that people are overusing antibiotics. They also believe that this overuse contributes towards the the growing number of bacterial infections that are becoming resistant to antibacterial medication.
Someone may develop an allergic reaction to antibiotics, especially penicillins. Side effects might include a rash, swelling of the tongue and face, and difficulty breathing. Allergic reactions to antibiotics might be immediate or delayed hypersensitivity reactions. Anyone who has an allergic reaction to an antibiotic must tell their doctor or pharmacist. They are called anaphylactic reactions.
We are already seeing a growing number of infections, as pneumonia, tuberculosis, and gonorrhea, becoming harder to treat as the antibiotics used to treat them become less effective. There simply aren't enough new antibiotics being developed to battle increasingly drug-resistant bacteria.
Without antibiotics, diseases like pneumonia would again become regularly fatal. Other common diseases treated by antibiotics include meningitis, tuberculosis, strep throat, strep infections, and ear infection. It is frightening to think we may be heading for a world without effective treatment for these illnesses.
We are in a post-antibiotic world. This means much shorter lifespans and greater mortality among healthy and young people. A future without antibiotics looks like no intensive care medicine, no complicated surgeries, no cancer chemotherapy, no organ transplants, no care for premature babies, because we wouldn't have antibiotics available to treat those infections.
Wait. Before continuing, we're going to go into a short commercial break.
We will come in a few minutes.
What does home mean to me? It's my sanctuary. It's the one place I can let my guard down. It's where I can just kick back and be totally comfortable in my own skin. You know what I'm saying?
Audio Jungle.
Welcome back, everyone. As a reminder, before our commercial break, we were discussing the history of antibiotics and the consequences of their inadequacy. To continue, I will give the word to Dr. Peláez, and she will start to tell you the misuse and possible solutions of the antibiotics.
Thank you, Dr. Salazar. Some medications that used to be a standard treatment for bacterial infections are now less effective or don't work at all. Antibiotic resistance is one of the world's most pressing health problems. The overuse and misuse of antibiotics are key factors contributing to antibiotic resistance. The general public, doctors, and hospitals all play a role in ensuring proper use of antibiotics and minimizing the development of antibiotic resistance.
According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, up to up to one third to a half of antibiotic use in humans is unnecessary or inappropriate. Antibiotics treat bacterial infections, not viral infections. For example, an antibiotic treats a strep throat, which is caused by the bacterium Streptococcus, but they aren't the right treatment for most sore throats, which are viruses.
Other common viral infections that don't benefit from antibiotic treatment include cold, flu or influenza, bronchitis, most coughs, some ear infections, some sinus infections, and stomach flu.
Taking an antibiotic for a viral infection won't, won't keep other people from getting sick, may cause unnecessary and harmful side effects, and also promotes the antibiotic resistance.
In Colombia, there's a lot of antibiotic use, especially without prescription. The main reasons include barriers to access to prescribed medications due to limited health insurance. Even those with adequate access report being willing to use antibiotics if they're convinced of their effectiveness. The second reason, pharmacy storekeepers are highly trusted. While some of them understand that antibiotics can cure infections but cause serious adverse events, there are several misconceptions about antibiotic therapy. These include a lack of knowledge of resistant transmissibility among communities. The final reason, the misconceptions in the public about inappropriate use of medications that need to be addressed by educational programs. To end up our discussion, we would like to give some of the possible methods the different people involved on the issue of antibiotic resistance could apply in order to avoid the harmful consequences. According to the World Health Organization, you can take the following measurements depending on your position.
In order to prevent and control the spread of antibiotic resistance, the general population can only use antibiotics when prescribed by a certified health professional. They must also never demand antibiotics if their health worker says they don't need them. They must always follow their health worker advice when using the antibiotics. You must never ever share or use leftover antibiotics. To prevent infections by regularly washing your hands, also preparing food hygienically, avoiding close contact with sick people, practicing safer sex, and keeping vaccinations up to date.
To prevent and control the spread of antibiotic resistance, policymakers can ensure a robust national action plan to tackle antibiotic resistance, improve surveillance of antibiotic-resistant infections, strengthen policies, programs, and implementation of infection prevention and control measures, regulate and promote the appropriate use of and disposal of quality medicine, make information available on the impact of antibiotic resistance.
To prevent and control the spread of antibiotic resistance, the health professionals can ensure your hands, instrument, and environment for them to be clean. The health professionals must also only prescribe and dispense antibiotics when they are really needed. The health professional must also report antibiotic resistant infections to surveillance teams. They can also talk to their patients about how to take the antibiotics correct and to know the dangers of the misuse.
Okay, now to conclude, let's remember that antibiotics are an amazing drug that has saved millions of lives throughout history and even do nowadays. That's exactly why we need to protect antibiotics. They're almost like a miracle drug. We suggest for you to take into account the dangers we mentioned today and follow the recommendations we gave so we can keep saving lives and improving the healthcare industry. Finally, thank you so much for watching Dr. Peláez and Dr. Nicolás today in CNN. See you next time.